Hello and welcome to the Hobby FC show, and today I'm going to tell you how I went from the UK to watch AC Milan in Italy for less than £100. And I mean, we're going to go through tips, we're going to go through little hacks that I figured out being in the city, how I did it, why I did it, and how you can do the same thing. But before we get into all of that, make sure wherever you're listening or watching this, you follow/subscribe wherever you are, because we are trying to build this into the best community of football collectors in the world to help and grow together. So please, if you could do that, that would be great. And get in the comments once you heard a bit about my story, because I want to hear about yours too. This is going to be an interesting one. It was a very interesting time for me in life when I did it. I was just at work. I was at work one day and I was really bored, and I thought, I've got nothing to do at the weekend, and I know that AC Milan are playing, so why not go out there and just watch it? So it's a bit of a two-part thing, because I went to watch them and I paid a stupid amount of money to do it. I went at the weekend, worst time to do. I went for a regular league game. I didn't know anything about the restrictions you had to do or any kind of like things you had to pass in order to do it. It was a shambles. But then I learned from that experience. I did it again a year later on my own this time. The first time I went with a friend, this time I went on my own. And when you're on your own and you're traveling, you get to learn and see a lot more than you think. So I highly recommend it for anyone who's thinking about doing it, but also as a person who looks like me, going into a different country, going into a different football landscape. There's a few things that did happen that I want to make you aware of. And just a full disclaimer, this is my personal experience, so it might not be yours, but still there are some general things to look out for when you're doing that. So, I mean, the very first thing is, why am I telling you this story and why AC Milan? Well, the reason I'm telling you this story is because Hobby FC is not just about the tangible collecting side of the football hobby. Hobbies can be anything, and it can be reading things, it can be watching things, listening to things. But travel is one of the biggest hobbies in the world, and I think people forget about that. The football world is massive, and there's so many things to see, so many things to learn and to observe and to get ingratiated in properly. And I just think footballing, like traveling in the football world, has been overlooked a little bit. And there's so many great clubs to go for. I've obviously gone for one of the biggest. I've also gone for some really small clubs around the world. I've gone to Norway to watch Lillestrøm. I've also gone to, obviously a bit bigger, I've gone to Holland to watch PSV. I've been to Nice to watch Monaco. I've been to Valencia. Like, there's been a lot of different clubs I've been to, but nowhere near have I scratched the surface on what I want to do, because as I keep doing them, as you'll see in this video, I just want to keep doing more. So this is why I chose AC Milan. Now, growing up, you can guess my age in the comments. I'll give you a few seconds. I'm 28. So I was 28 years old, and growing up, AC Milan were one of the only teams that I really feared. Myself, I'm a Manchester United fan, so I didn't really have the reason to fear many teams. I had the luxury of being one of the teams that everybody else was scared of. Not anymore. But that has, yeah, it's changed over time, but it's only just really, as modern football has gone on, it's only just really kind of brought out the nostalgic element of those types of teams. And that team of AC Milan with Dida, Cafu, Nesta, Maldini, Stam, Gattuso, Seedorf, Kaka, Shevchenko, like that team is one of the most perfect teams for me. And I adore it, and I even ended up writing a book about it, which I'll tell you about at the end of the video, link in the description if you can't wait. But I loved it, and AC Milan has always been that sort of caliber of club where I thought I would love to go and visit them one day. So the inspiration for writing my book, which I called The Conquerors, where I looked over the Carlo Ancelotti era from like the early 2000s to like 2008, where they obviously lost the Champions League and go into winning it. That all started from that first trip that I mentioned at the top of the video, where I kind of messed up going to San Siro, overpaying and not getting a good ticket and all these things. But I somehow wangled myself onto a massive anniversary celebration, and an hour before kickoff, those names I just mentioned, Dida, Marek Jankulovski, Massimo Odo, Clarence Seedorf, Andrea Pirlo, Gennaro Gattuso, they all just walked out onto the pitch. And I just remembered that team, and I thought, God, A, I need to do this again properly, which I'm going to tell you about, but I also need to write about this at some point, which I'll get to later in the video. But the very first thing is that I'm based in the UK. So if you're watching this and you're not based in the UK, then it will be different for you. Even just the currency, even just trying to get to places, it will be difficult, because getting there is the very first thing. You need to find as cheap a flight as possible to get to Milan. And thankfully, I was in London at the time as well. So there were so many different airports that allowed you to get to London very, very easily. Gatwick, Heathrow, Stansted, and even London City Airport get you to Milan. And Milan have two main airports as well. The one that I went to was Milan Malpensa, which I think is the easiest one because there's an express train, which I'll get onto later, that gets you into the center. But also because there's so many frequent flights that go between London and Milan, the price can be silly. And I'll tell you every single one of the prices as well. I'm not going to gatekeep anything. You just have to believe me that this is what I paid to go. And I'll tell you why it was that cheap, and you'll get onto it and you'll understand why in a second. But I got a return flight from London Stansted Airport to Milan Malpensa for £14.98. Yes, that was a return flight. And also it was with Ryanair, which, you know, it's the budget airline of the UK. Sometimes they're brilliant, sometimes they're awful. There is no in between. It's either that. I was lucky and I didn't get any delays. Everything went right. It wasn't a bumpy flight. It was fine. And me, myself, by the way, I'm afraid of flying. And I've said to my girlfriend, when we're up in the air at like 10, 20 million, thousand feet, whatever it is, I've said, look, if we're on the ground and there are 10 men over there and they're coming over and they want to either take what they want or end my life, I will lay on the ground and I'll lay everything out on the line for you. I will make sure that you are okay despite whatever happens to me. I won't even think about it. But babes, if we're up there and the pilot turns on the seatbelt sign and he says we're going to experience a bit of turbulence over the Alps, hold me. There's no way of getting around it. I'm afraid of flying and it's scary, okay? I still don't know how planes stay up. I still don't know how they land. I don't understand how the wings can like fold in on itself like this and still go strong. It scares me. And I'm not afraid to admit that. But I wasn't going to let that get in the way of the experience of watching a football team abroad, especially AC Milan. And this was one of the first times that I caught a flight on my own. And I think the fact that I was a bit disoriented, considering that the flight was at 5:49 a.m., that might have helped a little bit as well. Did I sleep on the flight? No, because I was a very scared boy. But it's about an hour and 50 minutes. Usually they can go a little bit quicker as well once you're in the air. And it was painless. It was very easy. And I got to Milan Malpensa Airport about 8 o'clock local time. So it was easy. That was the easiest bit, to be honest. And then from Milan Malpensa Airport to the center of Milan, that's when you go to their main sort of like Centrale is the name of the station, central station in Milan. And it's about 15 to 20 euros, depending on the time where you get it, to get an express train into the center, which takes about 45 minutes to an hour. Very easy. And in 3 hours, let's forget the 2 hours spent at the airport to go through security and prove that my complexion doesn't mean you are what I think I am. And you can just go through and you get on the flight. And like from the moment of sitting down on the flight to sitting in my hotel room, it was about 3 hours and 20 minutes, which is mad. Frankly, like get in a car right now in the UK and drive that amount of time. Where's that going to take you? Probably from Manchester to London, right? But the fact that I was able to go to a different place entirely and a different culture and everything, it was just awesome, and it was definitely worth it. So I got there and it was pretty smooth sailing by that point because I'd already purchased my ticket. What people have told me is that if you were to queue up early and go to the concourse at the San Siro and get a ticket, you can likely get a cheap one because on the day they slash prices just to get as many people into the ground as possible. I was not gonna spend money on a hotel and spend money on flights and spend all my time as well without the guarantee of going to a game. For me, it was better to just buy the ticket rather than just try and skimp out without that guarantee, because peace of mind. That's essentially what I was paying for. And especially when you consider that there are options to buy tickets, either on their main platform, on their ticketing website, or secondhand. The first time I did it, I went the second-hand option, which ended up getting me a ticket for €9. So it was kind of worth it to do it for the second-hand option. However, I had to print out 5 different documents. They didn't even believe that I was who I said I was. They wanted me to go back to the hotel and get my passport to prove that I was the person that was labeled on the ticket. And they didn't think that the piece of paper, which had a barcode and said it was a ticket for me to sit in this seat at this game, they didn't think it was real. And I'll be honest, the first time I went to Milan, it wasn't a pleasant experience. I remember going into a line with all of these documents. they didn't really speak much English, so there was a language barrier there. So immediately there's a bit of friction straight away. And I can sympathize with them a little bit because they're thinking there's thousands of people around. They just want people to do what you're supposed to do and come in. All this extra riffraff is just difficult. So I remember waiting in line for 10 minutes, and the guy that I spoke to, who was perfectly nice, told me to go into another line. Then I did that. Then I moved into another line, and I thought, this is all getting a bit weird now. Unless people have no idea what Viagogo is, which is one of the biggest, second-hand ticketing platforms in the world, then clearly there's something going wrong. And I just went up to a security guard and I just said, excuse me. I said it in the nicest way possible, as I was only raised to know. And I said, can you tell me where I need to be for this? And the first thing he did was take one of the documents, ripped it up, and then he pushed me away. Physically pushed me away to a point where someone behind me, I'm glad they were there, held me up. But of course they were annoyed because they thought I'd backed into them. So immediately I'm just in a bit of a corner. I'm thinking, I'm on my own here. The first time, I know I went with a friend, but to the game I was on my own. I was like, what do I do? This is my first time ever doing this. I'm just like, what do I do? So I didn't panic, thankfully. And I managed to get just enough signal around the ground to go onto the mobile version and say, here I am. And they were like, yeah, fine, just go through. And they didn't even check the ticket. They just let me walk on through. I was like, why have you done that then? What is the whole point of you doing that? But that's what you got to look out for, I guess, when you are a foreign person going into different places, that they are going to just ask more questions than usual. You might have to jump through a few more hurdles than usual because they prioritize their local fans, which every club should do. But that experience wasn't a nice one. Things were said that I'm not going to go through in this video, but you can kind of guess what they were. But that is not a reflection of AC Milan Football Club. It's not a reflection of Italy. It's a reflection on that person. And if it does happen to you, you just got to learn to understand your environment, to understand where you are, the safety levels of it, and make sure that you just know what you're there to do and you go and do it. Because had that not happened, I might not have gone back to Milan again. I might not have even been able to go in that stadium at that time, and the book wouldn't have been written, and I wouldn't be here talking about it as well. So it was very much worth taking a few minutes to calm down, rationalize the situation, see where I was, and just make sure that I got the end goal, which was to watch the football game. As it turns out, it was a 0-0 draw with Sassuolo. Wasn't really worth it. But then I went again. And then when I went over to the second time of doing it, I just thought, I'm not going to do the Viagogo thing anymore, right? Viagogo, Viagongon. I was not going to do that one more time. Let's just go on the main website and just see how much tickets are. Because the reason I got the tickets so cheap in the first place to get there was because it was a midweek game. And I thought midweek, it's either going to be a good league fixture or it's going to be a European fixture. Somehow, on the main Milan website, I got a ticket to watch AC Milan versus RB Leipzig in the final round of the group stage of the Champions League, where both teams needed to win in order to get qualification. I got that for 22 euros. And I don't really know how. And you think I'm sat up on the sticks. No, I'll put it over the screen now. That's where I was sat. It wasn't far. I wasn't far from the ultras. I could see everything. I could hear everything. I heard the UEFA Champions League anthem. I was right there in front of it. That little glass screen in front, yeah, that was annoying. But frankly, after Milan scored, which they did in a 3-1 win, I think it was, after Milan scored, I'm kind of glad the glass was there because they would have gone over. And I see why they have it. But great experience being able to get there. But I would say try your best to get it from the website itself, because it just, no unnecessary hassle and you can get it straight away. But if you do that, you will have to purchase something called a Tessera del Tifoso, which is a ID card. So it's similar to a membership that you have to pay to, maybe like be a member at a club like Arsenal or Manchester United or most Premier League clubs now, where you have to effectively say you're a fan. Now, I'm not specifically a fan of AC Milan, but they wanted to know that they weren't just letting any old Tom, Dick and Harry walk in. They were, but this apparently just helped their peace of mind. And you get one that's valid for about 5 years, I think it is, maybe a bit less, for 30 euros, one-time transaction. I'm not including that in this budget because I got it the last time. Fight with me all you want in the comments, but that's something that I personally felt better to get. I didn't need it for the Viagogo ticket that I got, which maybe is one of the reasons why they were so annoyed with me, I don't know. But I then got it for the AC Milan one because you need it to log in, create an account, and to have it set up there. Now, there was a lot of people when I went on to TripAdvisor that said when you get to Milan or when you get presenting your tickets in front of people, they want your ticket, ideally a barcode, and your Tercera del Tifoso. They want both. So you need either the physical card that they send you 2 or 3 weeks after you make an account, which obviously was a bit of a problem for me the first time because I ordered the Tercera a week before I went. It didn't arrive in time, so I just printed out the confirmation along with all the other documents. Again, that might be why they were, you know what, maybe I'm the problem. But then the second time, at least I had the Tercera and I just had the card and I was ready to go. I'll tell you this now, they did not check. They did not check my ticket. So it's up to you whether you take the risk or not, but I would say bring a valid ID. I'll get onto it a little bit, but just keep that in your mind to bring a valid ID with you. If you're a foreign person going over there, probably your passport. And as I'll tell you in a second, you want to make sure that you're wearing some cargos or somewhere where you have zipped pockets. Just keep that in mind. I'll get onto it. But there you go. You've got the cheap tickets for a midweek fixture. You've got the Ryanair flights from London to Milan Malpensa. You've got the hotel and you've got the shuttle. The hotel, by the way, wasn't the best. I wouldn't say illegal things have happened there. I would just say it's a really good place for illegal things to happen because there wasn't one camera anywhere. That my door specifically was caved in on one side, and I'm pretty certain that was done recently because there were still fibers of wood kind of sticking out, and that looked fresh. And someone clearly have gotten annoyed, or maybe the people at the hotel, they didn't check out early enough. I don't know what it was. But all I know is I ended up going into a room with a single bed with, put it this way, I did not sleep under the sheets. I slept on top of them. And it had a TV, which I'm not going to call a TV. I'm going to call it a monitor in the top left-hand corner, which looked like CCTV. And I ended up watching Law and Order in Italian because there was no subtitles. There was no opportunity to do anything differently with the settings. And the remote worked to turn it off and on. It did not work to change the volume or to change the channel. So I was just watching Law and Order really quietly. But you know what? Wasn't really in the hotel room for much longer. I ended up just going to Milan, which is one of my favorite cities in the world. There's so much to do there. There's even a shirt shop just in the shadows of the Duomo in the cathedral in Milan where you have to go. They have signed shirts, signed and match-worn shirts at the top. It's one of my favorite places to be. Football Club Duomo is the name. One of my favorite places to be in Milan. It's so easy to just go to the Milan store, whether it's Inter or AC, you can pick yourself. You can go and just check out the architecture. You go into the main Galleria bit. And I want to debunk a little myth that Milan is this uber expensive country with silly levels of expectations for spending and doing what you want to do. I'd lived in London at that time for about 6 years. Overall, I've lived there for 10. London is expensive, but not everything in London is expensive. The tube network isn't that expensive. You have to just know where to go. If you want to go into Knightsbridge every single day and you're spending $58,000 on a dinosaur egg for breakfast or something, then yeah, of course it's expensive. But if you just want to go to like a fast food restaurant or you want to get like a £10 pizza or somewhere, there's plenty of places to do that. But it's just all about your level of extravagance. I'm a very simple person. In my whole life, I've always been incredibly simple. I don't need the flashy stuff. And if I was with someone, I wouldn't have stayed in that hotel. My girlfriend would not have come with me to that hotel. I wouldn't have made her go through that. But I was traveling very light. I didn't have anything expensive on like that I was leaving there. And it was still in a very decent location. And just because the rooms were bad, the people seemed fine. And it's a risk you take anyway. So I just managed all of that. And I was like, I'm going to get a cheap hotel because it cost £42 overall. That's with fees, including the fee when you get there. You have to pay a kind of personal tax for being in there for being in the country of a certain amount of time, which is about 5 to 10 euros a day, depending on how long you're there for. So it was fine. And overall, I've only spent about £80 of the budget that I had for myself to get a ticket, to get a flight, to go to the game, and to get a hotel. Tell me anywhere in the UK where you can do that. Anywhere that's even worth going to. Because, like I said, I lived in London for a very long time. Going to watch Manchester United, my club, I'm spending all of that on a train ticket to go there. And then to get a ticket, as we know with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his politics, we've had to pay about £66 minimum to get a good one. And then to get a hotel out there, most likely, because I'm not coming back at a stupid time on the same day, you have to pay another £100. I'm easily spending 3 times as much to watch my favourite club, who I can't even watch like 15 to 20% of the games on terrestrial TV because of how that's set up. But then I can go and fly to another country, eat their food and embrace myself in their culture and watch a completely different type of football being played. I know which one I'm choosing. And it was awesome. And let me tell you, when you get to Milan, the food options are just ridiculous. You're in Italy, for goodness sake. Like, if you get a bad coffee or a bad pasta or a bad pizza when you're there, that's your fault. Go on TripAdvisor and pick the best ones for you. I'm a simple boy, like I said. Give me a nice pizza, give me a nice coffee. I'm good for most of the day. That's all I had, right? If I include food in this budget, I'm going to about £110. Honestly, and it was fine. Everything was, I don't need to sit down and be this lab of luxury all the time. I remember the first time even when I went, there is a margarita place in La Galleria, and I got a margarita with a water and with some accompaniments for €15. And they were waiting on me hand and foot. It was beautiful. Don't get me wrong, the service charge, I mean, I gave them an extra 10 because I was feeling bougie, but it was absolutely fine. And realistically, if you're one of those people that wants to go to the game instead, get a drink, get a little snack, whatever, do that. Because I've never been to a ground where there are so much options for food and drink than the San Siro. Because if you've never been to it, honestly, it's this monolithic stadium where it looks like it was reinforced for World War II, and I think it was. You see those famous like spiral, not staircases, because it is just one big ramp that smells of urine a lot of the time. It's not very pleasant. But you go up there a lot and you see below you, and you just see all around the stadium. You can buy your scarves, you can buy your pennants, you can buy your beers, you can buy your pizzas. It's just brilliant. And I remember going there. I got lucky the second time because I was a bit more extroverted between the two trips. The second time I went, I'm on my own. So instead of going in my shell, I felt a bit better about it. I met a few fans who were actually from America who were staying in Milan. They gave me some of their food. So do that instead. Just go find some tourists and you'll get their free food if you don't care about buying it yourself. Not a problem. The second time I went, though, no matter when you go, and I've had this experience both times with Milan, and a lot of people said it's their experience too, you've got your ticket. You've brought your ID, like I said before. Let's say you've got a Tessera del Tifoso, you bring that as well. Waiting in line to get into where you have to be is not a fun experience. I've done it twice now. Maybe the third time I go, it's easy. It is not a very pleasant experience. Because the cheap tickets are on a certain side of the stadium. So let's say you got all the famous people there, you got all the nice tickets there, and then you got all the paupers, right? They are in a place where you can see the ultras on your right-hand side. So the station that you come out of, the very first side of the stadium that you get to, that's usually where the cheaper tickets are, which is fine because you see the length of the pitch and you're absolutely golden. However, they have no system. Milan have zero system for dealing with people. And it happened both times. This time, thankfully, I wasn't getting pushed around. I wasn't getting things said to me or anything like that. But there were at least 5,000 to 10,000 fans all queuing up together, no single file, obviously, and all just bunched together trying to get the steward's attention to let them into the ground, to see their ticket and let them in. How all of us didn't just walk past them, I don't know. I think everyone just accepts that this is the norm. But there were about 10 or 20 stewards for all of us in a long line, and you just had to fight your way to the front and get it. And I guess that works for them because I eventually got through, and I got through in good time. But this is where I said a little bit earlier, please, this is just general travel safety tips. When you have valuable things in your pockets, wear something with a zip on them. Or do what I did, wear something with a zip on them, and then put those over a pair of joggers, and then put something inside your joggers and not on the bit that's exposed. I did both because I was just standing in line, minding my own business, yada, yada, yada. Who's going to play today? Leipzig and Milan. Who's going to win? Talking to a few people, trying to practice my fake Italian. And then I just feel some hands go into my pockets. I thought, hello, who's that then? And I go up behind me, and there were two people that clearly were part of the same organization because they did it at the very same time. It was quite a fair play to them. I don't know how they organized it, but they both went into my pockets and rummaged around, and they had the nerve to look at me as if I'm the idiot for not having anything in them. And they just looked at me, and then I was like, "Scusi, yeah, you okay? What are you doing?" And then they just walked away. I was like, okay, brilliant, because on the joggers that I had underneath them, that's where my passport was. Don't know what they would have done with that, but that's where my passport was, that's where my wallet was, and that's where my phone was. My whole life. Again, I'm alone in that country. Imagine I lost my passport. Imagine I lost my phone. What am I doing? Do you know what I mean? So thankfully I had the presence of mind to do that. Please do the same if you're like that as well. Because I can only imagine that's someone who has their wits about them. I hadn't been drinking. I hadn't been with a load of people. I hadn't been distracted at all. I was very focused on what I was going to do, very alert, and I still barely felt it. And I was like, just be careful with that. It's the same on the metro. The metro, by the way, is a €5 day pass to get on the red line to get from anywhere to Stadio San Siro. As you can imagine, it's a metro. Just use common sense. Go a little bit before the game. I always like to get there an hour before anyway, just so you can really enjoy the concourse and enjoy the game so that you're not in people's armpits the entire time. But it is difficult to get there and get there on time and not feel like you're in people's way, but leave it about an hour and you should be fine, because the metro system in Milan, London need to look at it and say, all right, it's probably not as clean, but it works. The metro system just works. It's cheaper and it works and it's brilliant. And I had just a brilliant time. I'm not going to lie. As soon as all was said and done, I was able to go to AC Milan again on my own this time and feel a lot more confident and a lot more secure in what I was doing, and eventually safe to just watch a game of football. And the minute you sit there and I heard the Champions League anthem, I see these guys play, I see some of their legends, and I love going to these grounds because they're kind of like they're like a living museum. Like, you just think, whenever I go to Old Trafford, I'm like, Ruud van Nistelrooy scored that goal in that end. Or when you go to a place like Milan, Shevchenko scored that goal against Bologna in this time, and like, you just think this is where all of these things happened. And I'll be deeply sad if we get to a point where we lose the San Siro, because I do think it's one of the best stadiums to visit. It's proud, it's huge, it's not modern, it's not very clean, I'm not gonna lie, but it's real, it's gritty, it's authentic, and that's what I loved about it. And ultimately, it is why I ended up writing the book, which I mentioned at the top of the show, The Conquerors. That is the whole reason why I love AC Milan, was that team. And if you are into books, if you're into sort of like indie publishers and stuff, I was very lucky that about 2 or 3 years ago, I reached out to Pitch Publishing, and I'll do a whole kind of segment on that as well for budding authors who want to do the same thing. But I reached out to them and I said, here's an idea for a book that I've got. It's a team biography on the Carlo Ancelotti era at AC Milan, because I remembered Istanbul, but I also remembered Athens. 2 years in between, same kits even being worn by the same team, but a totally different outcome. So I wanted to chart the journey between the two and say, you know, how did that happen and what were the key reasons for it happening? Because Ancelotti at the time was, in real time, was working with Bellingham at Real Madrid. People compared him to Kaká. I just thought this was the perfect time to do it. And just as it got released, it was when Inter Milan and AC Milan were playing each other in the Champions League final, which unfortunately Inter went on to win that time. But that was almost the same time as the anniversary of the famous picture of Marco Materazzi and Rui Costa, where they're leaning on each other as flares, and everything erupted during the game and called for it to be suspended and for Milan to go through on default. So it's a really historic book. I had a great time writing about it, and kind of I wanted to have an AC Milan shirt after everything I've just said, to watch and to have on during this video. But it's quite interesting that I've got this nice little Barcelona number there with, then you can see Ronaldinho on the back there. Shout out to Soccer Archive, by the way, the best provider of classic football shirts in the world. Ironic that I put it that way, retro football shirts in the world. But I think they're the best. And this shirt reminds me of the team that Ronaldinho was in. And I've always been flirting around with the idea of writing another one. And can I just say, the Ronaldinho team at Barcelona, Eto'o, Deco, Marquez, Larson, that might be the next one. But that's a story for a different day. Today, I hope you enjoyed my little story time on how I went to watch AC Milan from the UK for under £100. I will be doing a load more of these because, like I said, I've been to a few different countries and I know the lay of the land there. But I might take you on the next journey, because that's what the Hobby FC show is about. It is a journey for us all to become better collectors in whatever hobby we choose to adopt within the football world. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and let's collect and grow together. So I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.